Hey guys, Jay here, welcome to Eons of Battle. Magnets go together with wargaming like peanut butter goes with jelly. Or do they? Because I've been magnetizing models for years and years and years, and I'm not so sure that it's actually worth it. Recently, I put together a kill team, a Space Marine Deathwatch kill team with all the trimmings. Every single arm is magnetized, so I have access to every single possible weapon loadout. It took absolutely forever, but it is really fun to have every single possible option. But spending so much time on this kill team kind of made me think, was any of this actually worth it? Magnetizing models does take tons and tons of time, and I want to think about the pros and the cons, and if we're all kind of kidding ourselves with this whole magnetizing the weapon option business. The pros of magnets is you do get every single possible drop of satisfaction and hobby time out of every single piece of plastic in the kit. This took a very long time to do, especially getting the posing exactly how I wanted. Typically, when you magnetize a Space Marine, usually a Space Marine Tactical Marine is the best possible example of a perfect magnetized miniature, because they're just holding their weapon in front of them. And so you put a 1.5mm magnet in the wrist, you put a 1.5mm magnet in the gun, and then you can swap it out. I want the heavy bolter, or actually not the heavy bolter, I want the flamethrower, I want the melta gun, I want the grav gun, because we all use those grav guns, right? That come in the Tactical Marine kit. And that is like the perfect possible way to use magnets. But often you can't get away with the magnets. If you play like Sisters of Battle or Gene Stealer Cult, maybe Tau with those tiny wrists are kind of impossible to magnetize. Orcs you can sort of get away with it if you do the arm on the body, but the orc arm is so tiny, it's sometimes hard to actually fit a magnet in there, and you definitely should not magnetize like choppas and shootas, because if you're gonna have 100 orcs in your army, it is unfeasible to actually magnetize every single one of those orc boys. And what is the point of magnetizing those weapon options? The point is Wysiwyg. What you see is what you get. Having the appropriate gun to show your opponent that is the guy with the special gun. But really, do you really have to? Is your opponent really gonna recognize like, oh, that is the melta gun, or that is the plasma gun? Like without you telling them, if they're really into wargaming and maybe they even have a similar army or the same armor that you have, they'll probably recognize it. But like if I was playing Harlequins, I probably wouldn't recognize all of those different weapon options. And so my opponent should just let me know beforehand, oh, that's the Harlequin's kiss. Oh, that's the Harlequin's pew pew. Those are the special weapons that they have, and that'll let me know, more so than just seeing the exact appropriate thing on the actual model itself. So all of that extra time spent magnetizing the weapon options wasn't super worth it. I would argue that Wysiwyg is actually a little bit more important for you than it is for other people, because I am one of those people who do like to have the exact right model, because for me, these games are a little bit less competitive and a little bit more role-playing, and so I like to have my guys with the guns they are using in the game, but I wouldn't really expect that from anybody else. And so spending all of that time magnetizing all of those weapon options, it kind of makes me a little bit sad, because I love these 6 gals, these female Space Marines that make up this kill team, and they're gonna look great on the shelf, but all of these dismembered arms aren't gonna look that great on the shelf. And all of that time spent probably could have been spent painting up 2 more guys, and that would have looked a lot better on the display shelf. Now that comes with problems too. If I wanted to paint 2 more guys, I would have actually had to purchase 2 more guys, and that might not be feasible. If you want to magnetize so that you get the most possible amount of enjoyment out of your one box, then I think that that is a good solution. But for me and my magnetizing, I feel like I probably would have enjoyed just having more Deathwatch Marines. Because even though I do have all of these lovely weapon options, right now in the game of Kill Team, I kind of have the best loadout already equipped on these guys. Right now, it's all about plasma, and so I want as much plasma as I can possibly get. Maybe if I was fighting Harlequins, I would go close combat heavy, because that's a good way to take out Harlequins and get past their 4-up invulnerable save. So all of these different, beautiful looking little arms are just gonna sit in a little cup next to these guys and probably not see very much table time. I have lots of magnetized things in my armies, but that's a lot of magnetized guys. A lot of the magnetized guns have either been lost over the years, or I ended up actually just super gluing them to new models so that I could have more models with more weapon options. And even though they might not all get used in game, they all take up room on the display shelf, and I get to look at 40 Space Marines. Even though I only ever take 10 in game, I have 40 ready to rock and roll to look impressive on the shelf. And I think that brings me a lot more satisfaction than having a Swan team with all of the trimmings. Now, if you're somebody who's very, very organized, it might make a lot of sense to magnetize your models because you're not actually going to lose all the parts. But how many of us wargamers out there are super duper organized? I have like 5 or 6 different armies, and all of the magnetized bits are in little baggies somewhere in my house. Maybe if I had one of those little jewelry cases with all the little slots, I could have everything organized a little bit better. But come time for game time, usually I'm taking all my guys, throwing them in a cardboard box and taking them to the local game shop or to somebody's house. And am I gonna remember, or am I even gonna know that I wanna take all Meltas? Maybe I get to their house and I find out that they're playing an elite team. Ooh, I really want high damage weapons. Am I gonna think ahead of time? Am I gonna get all of those weapon options together and swap them in and out? I mean, probably if I was doing a really good job, but I don't necessarily want to always do a good job. And so I find magnets, they're just not that helpful for me. Now for vehicles, I think the exact opposite. Vehicles are so big, and the connection points for guns into the actual tanks is usually super big and super easy to sink magnets into. And so for vehicles, I think magnetizing is a great choice. And those guns are so big that it makes a lot of sense to make sure that you actually have the correct weapon option on your tank. But on little guys, I feel like Space Marines are almost as small as you can get, where magnetizing is actually a good option. Also, magnets are really, really hard. On these guys, I magnetized everything in the body and the arms, and so I had to paint a whole bunch of arms, and that meant I had to paint a whole bunch of extra shoulder pads. And it's a little annoying to spend so much time painting a beautiful little shoulder pad on a plasma gun that I probably will never ever actually equip on a dude. You know, it looks lovely. It's a very lovely disembodied arm, but I don't know if it'll ever see tabletop time. And I want all of my miniatures to actually get played with. I would love to know your guys' thoughts on magnets. Do you want to magnetize every model? Do you wish you magnetized all of your models? Do you agree with me that magnets just aren't that super useful? Maybe it's just a fun way to get more work into our miniatures and spend more time on our miniatures than is actually totally practical. And I think that is definitely, for me, how I'm gonna go forward with magnets. If I am just loving this kit and I wanna spend a lot of time on it and I wanna really make it perfect, then I think magnets are a really, really good way to go. But if it's just going to be kind of a normal squad of troops, I think I'll just slap something that looks cool on there and just move on. I'm finding that that's how I'm moving with a lot of my newer armies. With my Black Templar Space Marines, I want every single possible thing. Usually that just means buying even more models and putting them together in different ways. But a lot of my other armies, a lot of my armies that I'm collecting now, like Orcs and a lot of stuff for Age of Sigmar, I kinda, even though the instructions say like, oh, well, these are the scythes and these are the swords and they have very different weapon profiles, I might just glue half the squad together with scythes and half the squad together with swords because it just looks cool. And on the day, I'll tell my opponent exactly what I'm bringing, or really I'll just tell my opponent what that squad does as opposed to what specific weapon each thing does, because the more and more and more games I play, just the more stuff is out there. And I think it makes a little bit more sense to focus on the actual rules than the actual war gear. And that does actually seem to be the direction that Games Workshop is moving in. With Primaris Space Marines and a lot of the newer kits, it's a little bit more about the model and less about the weapon option. In 5th edition, 6th edition, 7th edition, even 8th edition Warhammer 40k, it was all about the weapon options. And that is one of the things that I think has drawn people to Warhammer 40k, is those little tiny minute details, the little options, the list building things. But do those actually represent a lot more fun to be had in game? Because it was really fun for me in high school while I was ignoring the teacher in the class. I had my notebook and I was writing out my army lists in the margins, being like, ooh, the power sword is very good, but the power axe is even better because it's got a little bit more attacks, and those attacks are going to be better at fighting Nyx Blue Orcs. But nowadays, when I have very little time to list build, I just want to grab miniatures and get to playing. And I think all of those little tiny details with the list building kinda leads to me not enjoying myself because everybody's waiting on me. I'm sitting there being like, oh god, which weapon am I gonna take? Which weapon am I gonna take? While I really just want to get into the game. Maybe that means that magnets are good because I can just quickly slip things on or off. Maybe more models would be better so I can just grab the exact ones I want. But I don't know, I'm very torn on magnets. It's a fun little thing in your brain to be able to just whip this on and off, but the amount of work and the amount of effort it takes to get those magnets in there perfectly. And every single time I try to sink a magnet, no matter what, I'm gonna glue it to my fingertips at least twice before I actually get it into the model properly. And that can sometimes lead to a little aggravation and a little annoyance, where what never annoys me is just putting a little bit of glue and sticking that arm on and being like, ooh, you know what? Just a little bit up, just a little bit up. That's the look I want. Because another problem with magnets, this arm is a little floppy. It's pretty good. I have 3mm magnets in there, but it's a little floppy. Every time I grab this guy, I kind of have to reset that sword to exactly where I want it to be. So I don't know, in vehicles, it always makes sense, but in actual infantry, I don't know if I'm ever gonna magnetize a model ever again. This kill team actually took years to put together, a little over a year to put together. And sure, I took humongous breaks, but if I had finished putting these guys together in like one evening and then painted them the next evening, I probably could have been playing with these guys since the first day of Kill Team 2, as opposed to now these guys are getting done almost 2 years into Kill Team 2. Magnets are holding these models together right now, but you know what is holding me together right now? That's right, the Eons of Battle Patreon. Over there, we have new terrain packs every single month. This month, we have the Starship Bridge. A grimdark control bridge full of stained glass and statues, perfect for any wargame you can think of. We also make one extra episode of Eons of Battle every single week where we take a look at our viewers' miniatures and give them some ideas and critiques of how to improve their painting. We host live Discord hangouts, painting guide PDFs, and we have a new tier where you can get your name on one of my Black Templar Space Marines and you can join the Legion. You might even get your name on a Black Templar who is magnetized. Magnets and models has been a staple of wargaming for as long as I can remember, and it is a fun, nice little challenge. But I don't know how much I want to be challenged by my miniatures. Sometimes I just want to get them done. Thanks for watching.